Boss, I'm going to meet a guy tonight.
What? In this storm?
Yes, it's important to me.
But the weather is terrible.
Hey, Mr. Ryu, heads up. I've got a date tonight. The moment those words hit the air, lightning cracked outside the window. The entire glass wall flared white, and half a second later, thunder rattled the whole building. 27th floor. Ryu Jae-seong Group Headquarters, dead center of Seoul. 5 people in the executive secretary suite stopped breathing at the exact same time. Whether it was the thunder or Namiju's announcement, nobody could quite tell. Miju set 2 folders on the desk with quiet precision, then grabbed her coat. She was the kind of woman who turned heads the moment she walked into a room. Deep, luminous skin, a cascade of rich, dark curls tumbling past her shoulders. Out of pure habit, she slipped the yellow rubber band off her wrist and swept that glorious hair into a loose knot on top of her head. It had the energy of a knight strapping on a helmet right before battle. Outside, rain began tapping at the glass, but Miju's stride didn't waver for a second. CEO Ryu Jae-seong looked up from his paperwork exactly 3 seconds later. This was a man who could review a decade's worth of contracts in one sitting without missing a single typo. And now those same sharp eyes were drifting towards some vague middle distance. The fountain pen in his hand trembled. A sheet of paper slid off the desk and landed on the marble floor. Senior Secretary Cha, 5 years on the job, witnessed it all and slapped a hand over her mouth. She had never once seen the CEO drop anything. Ryu Jae-seong stared at the fallen paper like it had personally offended him, then fussed absently with his own fingertips. The paper's too dry. Feels like it could slice right through you. Miju was already halfway to the elevator. Lightning split the sky outside one more time. To understand how Miju ended up here, you have to go back to a very specific bag of shrimp crackers. 2 in the morning. Her son was asleep, and Miju was sprawled on the couch, half a bag of shrimp crackers deep, watching whatever YouTube's algorithm decided to throw at her. The video title, A Day in the Life of a Secretary Who Makes 6 Figures. She watched it in a daze, finished the entire bag, and then right then and there submitted her application for the Certified Executive Secretary exam. The next morning, her son shuffled into the kitchen. "Mom, what you doing?" "Getting my second act together." He nodded and headed to school. 3rd graders are built to trust their mums after all. The acceptance letter came 10 days later. National top score. 39 years old. Former high school Korean language teacher. Exactly 1 year post-divorce. Miju read the text, walked to the kitchen, and tore open another bag of shrimp crackers. Her first morning on the job. Miju stood in front of the mirror. She pulled half her dark curls up, letting the rest drape down, her back full, thick waves that caught the light. Big, sharp eyes. A nose that could anchor a face. The kind of face that made people on the street do a double take and then pretend they hadn't. The problem was that Miju had absolutely no idea how to use it. She tried smiling at her reflection. "Mum, you okay? Does your stomach hurt?" She dropped the smile immediately. Natural was clearly the way to go. On the subway, she shoved a worn grey blanket into her bag. There was a small hole in one corner. She'd almost thrown it out, then didn't. Her gut said the 27th floor would be refrigerator cold with AC. Her gut was right, as it turned out. The executive secretary suite was on the 27th floor of Ryu Group HQ. On her first day, the sky outside was a solid sheet of grey. Storm clouds smothered the Han River, and even at 10 in the morning, the office felt dim. Miju glanced at the view for a moment. She didn't mind it. Overcast days. You actually see more clearly when there's no glare. Her new co-workers had exactly 2 ways of ignoring her. Method 1. Pretend she didn't exist. Method 2. Dump every unwanted task on her desk. Miju responded to both with the exact same energy. 0 words, 0 drama, perfect execution. Her co-workers had the nerve to look surprised. So Miju brewed a round of barley tea and set a cup in front of each of them. All that AC keeps people stiff. Barley tea won't fix your face, but it might warm up whatever's going on inside. Cold gut, sharp tongue, that's just science. CEO Ryu Jae-seong appeared in the secretary suite for the first time on her second morning. The moment the corridor door opened, 4 employees simultaneously straightened their spines. Ryu didn't even glance at them, he just picked up a file. Then his eyes stopped moving. There was Miju, a worn grey blanket across her lap, scrolling through her monitor like she owned the place. Ryu's brown hair, shot through with silver under the fluorescent lights, went very still for just a moment. That evening, the secretary suite crew regrouped at a neighbourhood snack bar after work. Senior Secretary Cha speared a piece of sundae and kicked things off. Okay, is it just me, or is the new contract hire a little off? The youngest staffer looked up from her tteokbokki. She caught the decimal point error. I checked that report 3 times. Cha poured herself a shot of soju and dropped her voice. The weird part isn't her. It's the CEO. He dropped his papers, you guys. Nobody said a word. The TV above the bar was playing a variety show, laugh track blaring. Not a single person laughed. What's her name again? Namiju. Just saying the name out loud made everyone's voice drop half a notch. The snack bar door creaked in the wind. It took less than 3 hours for word of Miju's little announcement to ripple through the entire floor. Senior Cha mentioned it to someone in the bathroom. That person told 2 more people in the cafeteria. By 8 that evening, most of Ryu Group's 27th floor had heard that the new contract hire, Na Mi-ju, was something else. Nobody could explain exactly what that something else was. The downpour outside hadn't let up. At the far end of the corridor, a janitorial cart squeaked and groaned. An older woman, she had to be in her 70s, moved her mop slowly across the wet floor, then clicked her tongue toward the CEO's office down the hall. Girl marched out right into a storm without an umbrella. Then again, I suppose when you are the storm, you don't really need one. A quiet yard always gets the wildest wind. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. Nearly midnight. The lights in the 27th floor office were still on. Ryu Jae-seong sat at his desk. Papers closed. Coffee in the cup, cold. He was facing the Han River view, but not actually seeing it. What kept snagging in his head was a yellow rubber band. The way she'd slipped it off her wrist and gathered all that hair in one clean motion. The finality of it. Like a knight putting on a helmet. He stood and walked to the window. Rain traced long lines down the glass. He stood there for a beat, then said something to nobody in particular. Contract employee work log. I'll need that report again tomorrow. The office was empty. No one answered. Lightning cut across the Han River one more time. Starting the very next morning, Ryu Jae-seong began watching Na Mi-ju. He told himself it was a routine efficiency check on the new contract hire. He even had the secretary suite director deliver daily work logs on her first time in 5 years that directive had ever been issued. The director's eyebrow twitched, but she kept her mouth shut. Ryu always had his reasons, and nobody at this company had ever asked what they were. At least, not until now. Miju felt it. Specifically, on the 3rd morning at 10:40, she knew that Ryu Jae-seong was watching her through the glass partition at the end of the corridor. She recognized the feeling in her back. It was the same radar she'd used as a teacher to catch students copying off each other during exams. The prickle of eyes that thought they were invisible. Miju kept her eyes on her screen. The display showed materials for tomorrow's executive meeting. She'd already spotted an error a number off at the 3rd decimal place. Most people would sail right past it. Miju flagged it. The department head's face went bright red. Ryu Jae-seong watched every second of it. Lunchtime. The rest of the suite headed downstairs to the cafeteria, while Miju stayed behind and pulled out her lunchbox. Inside, rolled egg, spinach with sesame, stir-fried anchovies, all perfectly arranged. Tucked alongside the little side dish containers was a note from her son. Crooked, earnest handwriting. 2 words. You got this. She looked at the note, ate a piece of rolled egg, stared out the window. The blue sky left behind by yesterday's storm was already disappearing. Clouds were moving in again from the west, dark and determined. As Miju closed her lunchbox, she slid the note into the inner pocket of her bag. She didn't throw it away. 2 in the afternoon. In the corridor outside the secretary suite, she saw Ryu Jae-ho for the first time. 42 years old. Hair always slicked back. The kind of guy who kept both hands in his pockets when he walked. He pushed open the door and waved a document at Ryu Jae-seong like he was flagging down a cab, a little too casual for brothers. Jae-seong took the file and skimmed one line. While he did, Jae-ho's eyes made a slow lap around the secretary's suite, like browsing a menu. Mi-ju tracked his gaze from behind her monitor. It paused at the file cabinets, then the director's desk, then her. 3 full seconds. Contract hire. New. Nothing more to him. He left. 3 seconds. Mi-ju filed that away. 3 in the afternoon. The squeak of wheels in the corridor. Squeak! Squeak! Mi-ju had heard that sound at the same time, same spot, 3 days running. The cart belonged to a woman who looked about 70. A slight stoop to her back, a pale green bandana wrapped around her head, a bandage on her left index finger. A spare slipper hung off the bottom of the cart. The rest of the secretary suite treated her like furniture. Mi-ju set a cup of barley tea on the cart as she passed. The old woman stopped, first time that had ever happened. She drank, then looked Mi-ju up and down with eyes that were surprisingly sharp. 20 years of cleaning these hallways will do that to a person. Hun, don't you ever go into the storage room on the 3rd floor alone. Mi-ju kept her hands around her own cup and looked at her. Why not? The woman didn't answer. She just pushed her cart. The wheels squeaked 3 times and she disappeared around the corner. The second the old woman turned the corner, it happened. The corridor lights went out. Not in sequence both ends at once, darkness closing in from either side like a curtain being drawn from the middle. 3 seconds and the whole hallway was gone. Only the red emergency lights remained. Oh my God! Senior Cha let out a short scream. Facilities took 2 minutes to respond. Electrical fault, they said. Probably the storm last night. As the fluorescents flickered back on one by one, Mi-ju's eyes went to the stairwell sign at the far end, the one pointing down to the 3rd floor. Old directional sticker. And on top of it, someone had layered a piece of tape over an older piece of tape. That tape had been there a long time. Probably nothing. Was it really nothing, though? 9 in the evening. Mi-ju called her son from the subway. Did you eat? Yep. Homework done? Done. Ready for bed? Mum, when are you coming home? Mi-ju gripped the overhead handle and closed her eyes for a moment. The train plunged into a tunnel and the windows went black. Hey, want to hear something wild that happened today? What? The scariest looking person I met today turned out to be totally terrified himself. Her son thought about this for a second. That sounds exactly like Do Hyun in my class. Mi-ju smiled. Silently. Subway rules. Go to sleep. I'll give you a kiss when I get home. After she hung up, she reached into the inner pocket of her bag and tapped it gently with one fingertip. The little note rustled. Time to head home. The elevator doors opened, and Ryu Jae-seong was already inside. Mi-ju hesitated half a beat, then stepped in. 27th floor down to lobby, just the 2 of them. Not a word was said. Mi-ju's long, thick curls swayed lightly in the AC draft. Ryu's eyes moved in that direction for just a fraction of a second. Floor 17. The doors opened. A junior employee from another team got in, froze when he saw Ryu, and immediately retreated to the far corner, like he'd been caught doing something wrong. Mi-ju watched the whole thing unfold and let one corner of her mouth lift the tiniest bit. In the lobby, Ryu spoke first, finally. The materials for tomorrow's morning meeting. Well done. Mi-ju answered without looking back. Thank you. 2 words. Ryu Jae-seong would replay those 2 words 3 separate times in his office later that night. Mi-ju ended up on the 3rd floor entirely by accident, or so she told herself at the time. Thursday morning, the suite director asked her to dig up records from the company's 1994 founding ceremony. Pre-digital, paper originals, they'd be in the file room on the 3rd floor. The file room happened to be right next to the storage closet. While she was hunting for the right box, she naturally glanced over. The closet door was open. It had a padlock mount, but the padlock wasn't there. Mi-ju stopped. Checked the corridor. Empty. The fluorescents hummed. A thin breath of air drifted out from inside the closet. The smell of old paper and time. Mi-ju hugged the 1994 file to her chest. There was no reason to go in. There was also, honestly, no real reason not to. The missing padlock itself was the odd part. She took 3 more steps forward. The storage closet was dark, smelled like dust and old cardboard. She lit up her phone screen. 3 rows of metal shelving, stacked with labelled boxes organised by year. Pretty standard, except at the very back, bottom shelf, 1 box with no label. The dust on it was noticeably thinner than on everything else. Someone had opened it recently. Miju opened the box. 2 envelopes inside, 1 thick, 1 thin. She picked up the thin one. 3 sheets of paper. It took 5 seconds to read the first line. In those 5 seconds, her eyes went back to the beginning 3 separate times. It was a copy of a will, signed by Ryu Jae-seong, founder of Ryu Group, dated 12 years ago, not to eldest son Ryu Jae-seong, but to nephew Ryu Jae-ho. Partial control of group operations, contingent on certain conditions being met within 5 years of the founder's death. The founder had died 7 years ago. Miju steadied her breathing and opened her camera. 12 photos. She slid everything back in, sealed the box, walked out, and checked the corridor still clear. Back to the file room to grab the 1994 ceremony binder, then up to the 27th floor. Her face never changed. From that afternoon on, Miju started watching Ryu Jae-ho. He came through the secretary suite often enough, always framed as dropping off paperwork for Jae-seong personally. But Miju could see his eyes were doing a slow scan of the room each time. When he smiled, his left eye lagged a fraction of a second behind his right. Classic tell the kind of smile that didn't mean anything. Miju clocked the timing from behind her monitor and logged it. After work, Miju skipped the subway and walked. 40 minutes home, heels clicking on the sidewalk, she flipped through all 12 photos in her head, one by one. Will. Seal. Signature. Date. Clauses. The numbers were assembling themselves into a picture, but one piece was missing. Why had Jae-ho pulled those documents out now? Why leave the padlock off? Was it a mistake? Or a trap? She stopped in front of a convenience store. Her reflection looked back at her from the glass door, full, flowing dark curls, blank expression. She studied her own face for a second. Then she walked in and bought a bag of shrimp crackers. Heavy thoughts always called for shrimp crackers. That was just a fact of life. Same time, 22nd floor. Ryu Jae-ho's office. Jae-ho was at his desk, staring at his phone. Nami Ju's HR file was on the screen. Name, age, former teacher, divorced, contract employee. His assistant lingered by the door. What do you want to do about her? Jae-ho flipped his phone face down on the desk. She's a contract hire. What's she going to know? Just keep an eye on her. The assistant left. Jae-ho sat alone and opened his drawer. Inside the thick envelope from the closet, the one he'd already retrieved. He drummed his fingers on it, then stopped. He had a vague memory of something a phone screen lighting up near the closet window this afternoon. He wasn't sure if he'd actually seen it. He closed the drawer, opened it, closed it again. 8 in the evening. The last stragglers were packing up. Miju was heading back from the restroom when she passed the corridor leading to the rooftop conference room. Through the glass wall, she could see the lights were on inside. Jae-ho was in there, on the phone. She didn't stop, kept the same pace. The soundproofing on those glass walls wasn't perfect. 3 words leaked through. Brother, that woman, prosecutor's office. Miju walked back to her desk, picked up her bag, pulled out her phone and checked. All 12 photos, still there. She zipped the bag shut. Across the building, in the rooftop conference room, Jae-ho hung up the phone and stood looking out at the city lights below. The coffee cup in his hand gave a small tremor. Funny how life works, isn't it? Miju was in that storage closet for exactly 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes were the key that would shake 15 years of this company's history loose. Psychologists call it critical perception. It's not about trying harder to see. It's about being the kind of person who is already ready to see. Miju had always been that person. Nobody had just bothered to notice until now. Monday morning. Miju settled into her seat, and the room felt different right away. The suite was always quiet, but this was a different flavour of quiet. The kind where everyone is trying very hard not to look at you. Senior Cha reorganized the same stack of papers twice. The youngest staffer walked to the break room for coffee and came back empty-handed. 10A. The suite director called her over. Miju, Director Ryu Jae-seong is asking for you. Miju left her bag at her desk, but not before checking that the zipper was locked. Jae-seong's office was on the 22nd floor. Big windows, big desk. On that desk, a pile of files and a designer pen set. When Miju walked in, he didn't stand up. He just tilted his chin up at her from his chair. Miju, you were on the 3rd floor last Thursday, right? Yes. The suite director sent me to retrieve founding ceremony records from the file room. And did you go into the storage area as well? Before answering, Miju glanced at Jae-seong's left eye. It was tracking just a hair slower than his right. He was nervous. The storage door was open. I closed it. Jae-seong's eyebrow moved, just barely. Miju caught that too. Jae-seong stood up, came around the desk to stand in front of her. He had a solid head of height on her, and he was the type who used it. Talking down to people was his comfort zone. After 20 years in teaching, Miju had dealt with 3 principals exactly like him. She was not impressed. Mind if I take a quick look in your bag? We seem to have some important documents missing. Do you have a warrant? His mouth stopped working. Miju kept going. If company property is missing, go through security. There's a whole process for that. Let me know if there's something I can actually help with. Jae-seong took one more step forward and grabbed the strap of her bag. Miju didn't step back. Jae-seong pulled at the strap. Miju looked him dead in the eye and held still. And in that eye, she saw something shift. Not confidence. Fear. The corner of her mouth lifted barely, just one side. You're not scared of me. You're scared because you know I already know. His hand went slack. The fingers loosened on the strap. Miju calmly re-slid it onto her shoulder. Someone was watching from the corridor on the other side of the glass. Ryu Jae-seong, standing still at the far end of the 22nd floor hallway, a folder pressed in his hand. He moved toward the door 5 seconds later. By the time Ryu Jae-seong pushed the door open, Jae-seong was already back behind his desk, looking like nothing had happened. It was a pretty polished performance. Almost 20 years of practice will do that. Jae-seong looked at Miju. Miju looked at Jae-seong. 2 seconds of eye contact. She looked away first. If there's nothing else, Director, I'll head back to my desk. Jae-seong didn't respond. Miju didn't wait for him to. Out in the hallway, she pressed the elevator button. Footsteps behind her. Jae-seong. Namiju. First time he'd used her name. She turned around. You handled that well. That was it. He turned and walked back. His brown and silver hair caught the fluorescent light for just a moment. Miju watched his back until the elevator doors closed. Back in the 27th floor office, Ryu Jae-seong stood at the window. The scene downstairs kept replaying. Jae-seong grabbing the bag strap. Miju not budging. That smile. Jae-seong tapped his finger on the windowsill. Once, twice, 3 times while staring at the Han River. He called the suite director. Clear Miju's schedule for this afternoon. May I ask why? Just do it. 5 years of working for this man meant she didn't push further. He turned back to the river. Clouds were moving fast overhead. Something sat wrong with him, the thought that she could have been actually hurt down there. He decided not to give that feeling a name. Not yet. 4 in the afternoon. The familiar squeaking of wheels in the hallway. Miss Kim Mal-sun slowed as she passed the secretary suite and caught Miju's eye. Miju was already pouring barley tea. The old woman took it, then glanced at Miju's hand. There was a faint red mark on the back of it where the bag strap had dug in. Watch yourself with that one, hun. His father was the same way. Pretty smile. Dangerous eyes. The ones who grin the widest are the ones you gotta watch the closest. Miju held her cup and looked at her carefully. You knew his father? The old woman didn't answer with words. She pushed the cart, but this time she added one more thing as she turned away. The founder said something to me, right before the end. When the time is right, I'll say it. The cart wheels squeaked off into the distance. That night, Ryu Jae-seong's phone rang 3 times. He picked up. None of them. He opened the drawer in his office desk, took something out, put it back in, took it out again. The drawer opened and closed 4 times. On the 27th floor, Ryu Jae-seong called the head of legal. Short call. Directive full review of all documents related to the company's founding era will by the next morning. The legal director hung up and leaned back in his chair. Something long buried had just started to move. From the far end of the corridor came the familiar sound of a cart. Squeak! Squeak! Miss Kim Malsun, same time as always, same route as always. She slowed as she passed the 22nd floor. A sliver of light leaked from under Jae-ho's office door. The old woman tightened both hands on the cart handle, knuckles wide, joints thickened by 15 years of mopping these very hallways. It won't be long now. She said it to no one. No one heard it. Tuesday. Before dawn, 2 cars outside the prosecutor's office. The story on Ryu Jae-ho's embezzlement broke at 6 a.m. The thread that unravelled it, a forged seal, buried in the founder's will documents, flagged by the legal team during their overnight review. That one thread, once pulled, brought 15 years of ledgers pouring out. Shell companies, diverted subsidiary funds, falsified filings. Jae-ho had been meticulous. He'd been at it a long time. And he hadn't been alone, there were 3 of them. Word reached the secretary suite at 9 a.m. Senior Cha went completely rigid, phone in hand. The youngest staffer let go of her coffee mug. It didn't break the carpet. Caught it. Nami Ju sat at her monitor in the exact same posture as any other morning. 11A. A full executive assembly was called. The 27th floor conference room filled up. Ryu Jae-seong stood at the front of the room. His brown and silver hair looked sharp and cold under the lights. His expression was unreadable. No, it was readable. It was solid. Not the fragile hardness of something that's never been broken, but the stronger kind that comes from something broken and put back together. The cracks don't make it weaker, they make it tougher. Jae-seong said 12 sentences. Inside those 12, an apology, a prevention plan, a restructuring outline. No emotion, just what needed to be said. When the meeting ended and the executives filed out, not one of them looked him directly in the eye. Miju wasn't in the room. Secretary suite staff don't attend executive assemblies. 2 in the afternoon, the landline at Miju's desk rang. Miju, the CEO is asking for you. She pushed open the door to the 27th floor office. Jae-seong was at the window. Outside, the clouds that had been coming and going for days had finally cleared. The Han River was visible, actually visible, sharp and distinct. He turned when he heard her come in. Sit down. She sat. He opened a drawer and took out an envelope. Inside, a permanent employment contract and a compensation proposal. Miju flipped to the first page and looked at the number, then looked at it again. The number hadn't changed. The photos you took on the 3rd floor. I've known about them from the beginning. Miju looked up from the page. If you hadn't known, you wouldn't have called legal first. Miju closed the envelope. Neatly, slid it back across the desk toward him. Jae-seong's eyebrow moved, just barely. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. She didn't unfold it. Just placed it on the desk. I'm not this company's secretary. Not starting today. Jae-seong looked down at it. Didn't pick it up. A long moment of silence. The Han River outside flashed in the sunlight. The only sound in the room was the thin hiss of the AC. Miju stood. Picked up her bag. Jae-seong spoke from behind her. Can I ask what you mean by that? She stopped with her hand on the doorknob, answered without turning around. You'll understand in 3 days. The door closed. That evening, Miju and her son sat side by side on the couch. He was watching cartoons. She was drinking barley tea. For a while, neither of them said anything. During a commercial break, he looked up. Mum, how's work been? Miju thought about that for a second. It was good. Was. Past tense. She ruffled his hair. Kid of a Korean language teacher, of course he caught the verb tense. Mum's starting her own company. For real? Yep. You think it'll work out? Miju took a sip of barley tea. Of course. You know who your mum is? Namiju. That's right. Namiju. They both turned back to the cartoon at the same time. The living room was quiet. The comfortable kind of quiet. 3 days later. Miju was at a cafe near her son's school, nursing an Americano in the afternoon sunlight. Her long, rich, dark curls caught the light through the window. The school gate was visible across the street. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She picked up. Namiju. It was Jae-seong. When your company's up and running, we'd like to offer you an outsourcing contract with our group. Miju set down her coffee. Her son would be walking out any minute. She thought for a moment. I'll consider it. The call ended. She turned her phone face down on the table and took another sip. Both corners of her mouth went up this time. At that same hour, across town, the first hearing in the case against Ryu Jae-seong was underway. In the very front row of the witness gallery, wearing a pale green bandana, sat Kim Mal-sun. Her back curved like it always had, but her eyes were steady and clear. She'd been waiting 20 years for exactly this moment. The judge asked her to raise her right hand. She raised it wide-knuckled, joints thickened by 15 years of mopping those hallways. 1 week later, third floor of a small building in Mapo, Seoul, Miju sat at a new desk in a new office. On the desk, one laptop, 1 cup of barley tea, and a note from her son. 4 words this time. Mum is the best. She stuck it right next to the monitor. A knock at the door. Come in. The door opened. Ryu Jae-seong, business suit. Envelope in hand. His brown and silver hair caught the afternoon light softly. I brought the outsourcing contract. Miju looked at him. He looked at her. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Neither of them looked away first. Have a seat. This time, it was Miju who said it first. Jae-seong sat down and glanced out the window. Clear sky. No lightning, no thunder, no heavy clouds. Just blue. Pure, uncomplicated soul blue. Who knew the sky could look like that?
Miju never ran from anything, not the divorce, not starting over, not that storage closet door that happened to be standing open. She just walked straight in. This isn't a story about a dramatic revenge plot. It's a story about a woman everyone assumed couldn't see very much, who turned out to be the one seeing everything most clearly, and because she kept her eyes open, the truth that had been buried for years finally had somewhere to surface. The storm didn't come from outside. It was always already inside her. What is this story really trying to tell us? It's telling us that the quietest person in the room is often the one who has seen the most. The world doesn't get changed by the loudest voice. In the room, it gets changed by the person who is actually looking. Miju sat in a seat where she was overlooked and not once did she look away. Those open eyes dragged 15 years of buried truth back into the light. And what about sincerity? The harder you chase it, the faster it slips away. But let go, really let go, and it finds its own way home. Ryu Jae-seong never picked up that resignation letter, because sometimes releasing something is the strongest move you can make, and never underestimate the testimony of someone who has been patient for a very long time. Ms. Kim's hands, thick at every joint, worn by 15 years of mopping hallways. Those hands were on the right side of history. The people who have quietly held their ground beside you, they are worth more than you know. This story is a work of fiction,